will start this discussion session. People in Zoom, the interpreters, Yash, are you there?
Hi, Simona, we are here.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
So we have to start by thanking Yasodhara for all of her help through Colombo Plan's efforts to make all of this possible with Simona and her team. Why don't we give them all a round of applause for all of their work? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian.
So friends, today we are going to try to wrap up what has been several days of very interesting, mind-opening conversations on different thematic issues related to data. Now we need to land the plane somewhere, and I want to make sure that we reflect as a group and a collective, but also I invite all of you, international as well as the ISS team and others from Italy here, in terms of just you personally in your area of work, where do you think the global coalitions can support, and what recommendations can we look at that support your work of what you are doing day in and day out? It may have been things that we discussed. It may have been things that we did not discuss, but the goal is to start jotting down ideas, and we will be adding these to the menu of ideas that others are also providing to us through the other co-chairs of the other working groups. We have also, we're also going to be sharing this to the participants of the coalition that will be joining the meeting on March 6 and 7. In anticipation of that meeting, we're going to be sending out an email that has the recommendations, these plus the ones for Working Group 1 and Working Group 3. Not because it's final, but because we want feedback and further ideas. And as Sarah is typing those up on the screen, you will notice that at the moment, I'd like to start off with the first sub-working group, which is 2.1, and that is on data collection, analysis, and trends, including early warning. And so we'll look at the three recommendations that we have. We'll first see if there's any comments or discussions that we want to have on those recommendations. And then after that, we will then open up for additional recommendations that we may have missed, so we can add those also. Hello, everyone. Excellent. So that is, yeah. And I also want to, once again, I know I ran through my slide very quickly on the first day, but I want to just one more time explain what we're looking at in terms of outcomes or deliverables. Yes, if you hold the control button and then roll up the size, yeah. So for example, what we're looking at is to have a recommendation like the first one, improve drug composition analysis through the provision of forensic laboratory equipment, mentoring, technical assistance, and the development of a global forensic network. Okay, so that is the recommendation. So what happens next? Well, as I had just explained the first day, we have initiatives, some that may be national initiatives, some that may be international, but I'm very focused from our side on international initiatives supported by international organizations. So Colombo Plan has a global forensic network, a Sentinel program that brings together forensic toxicologists and helps sort of share information and data on latest trends. So that would be the initiative that supports that recommendation. You might say, well, we have additional initiatives in our country. That's fine. We could add those as well. And this is all for the development of a report that we will be having for September. So we have this. So we have this initiative. Beyond initiatives, we want achievements. And between April and July, we need to have achievements in all of the major initiatives that we have within our recommendations so that we can document them in the report, the year one report that is coming out in September. What could an initiative be? Well, in April, Barry and the Colombo Plan team are going to bring the lab directors together in Thailand, in Bangkok, hopefully ISS can also participate in that as well. The idea will be to look at the some of the samples, some of the composition of the substances that are being detected in the different countries and share information and discuss. Okay, what is the outcome? Beyond the achievement, we want an outcome within 1, 2, 3, 5 years. And so what are those outcomes and what would that look like? An increase in public health alerts that are shared from the forensic toxicology labs to hospitals, let's say. The improvement in clinical practice, the reductions of overdose cases. I mean, we could kind of discuss what sort of the responses might be that would have a measurable impact. And of course, it might be easier to measure in some countries than in others, but we should have concrete outcomes that go beyond that. That's not for the report in September, but that is for the measurement of the coalition. When we look 5 years from now, what did the coalition achieve when through the work that it did? So I just wanted to provide that context because we're looking, again, recommendations for what purpose, to have initiatives identified, some that can be global, some that may be national initiatives. For what purpose? To then document achievements, which are maybe shorter term measures, activities that take place. For what purpose? To have long-term outcomes. So it's those 4 steps that we're looking at. But we're not going to go through all of those today. We don't need to map all of that out. The only thing I'm asking about are the recommendations. And from there, we can build on top of that architecture. So we have discussed, and what's missing here, as Enchik, Hernan, and others pointed out from UNODC, Angela, is a bit of the global infrastructure. So when I open it up, I know we're going to get into DMP and different data kind of sources as well, ARQ and such. But just to kick us off, the first one is to improve drug composition analysis through the provision of forensic laboratory equipment, mentoring, technical assistance, and the development of a global forensic network. Any comments or thoughts on that one? Also, anything we need to change in terms of the language, any edits to the language, we should look at it more this way, or that's exactly not it. Please welcome your comments now.
I can start off the discussion. Barry Logan, I'm from CFSRE, working with the Colombo plant. So I spoke at length yesterday, and I apologize if I got too deep into the weeds in terms of some of the technology, but it's a significant factor in deciding or making decisions about what's appropriate for different kinds of settings. I would say one of the first things, I mean, the objective here is to fill in some of the gaps in our knowledge about drug trends and patterns internationally, not just NPS or some of the more esoteric drugs, but also changes in patterns of use of more established synthetic drugs. So for that, I'm sure we would rely on information from UNODC in terms of where they see gaps, feedback that we get at the lab directors meeting in Bangkok. So that's really the first step, I would say, is where are we missing data? And the value in collecting that data, even from countries that have relatively little exposure to new substances, is that, as we've learned over the last couple of days, nothing is static in this world, and what starts in one country or in one province can easily and quickly spread to another. So awareness of what's going on around the world ultimately impacts us at the global level. So geographically, where are the gaps? The second question is, once you find those gaps, what's the appropriate model? And not every site that wants to collect this information needs the very latest, most expensive technology. You really have to come up with a model that's fit for purpose and has an appropriate technology for local resources to support, whether that's service, whether it's trained personnel, whether it's a stable environment to run some of those instruments. And then the ability of instrument manufacturers to support the instruments in country, because I mean, we experience in the United States, for example, we have some equipment that is manufactured in Germany. There are only 2 engineers in the whole United States who can support those instruments. So when they go down, it can be weeks before we get an engineer to come and work on them. So that kind of support is significant. And then the implementation model, particularly if you're taking a laboratory from a level of technology or a very basic testing model that they have, which is maybe rudimentary and has some limited scope and capability, up to the next level in terms of technology, selecting people who are thought leaders within the group who are capable of receiving training at another laboratory and then taking that training back to their facility. And really, one of the things that's going to make this easiest is having them trained in a facility that has the same technology that they're implementing in their own laboratory. And that could be anything from a handheld device all the way up to, as we discussed yesterday, GC-MS. I think for true new drug discovery, true early warnings of new substances, the level of technology is a step above that, and there's a corresponding greater wherever that is established institutional support network to maintain and support that more advanced, more expensive technology. But that makes more sense to do that on a regional basis rather than on a local basis. So locally, monitoring for things with targeted testing that you know are in the environment, keeping that up to date so that you will be able to add ability to detect emerging substances, but not necessarily discover them. And then probably some, after the person receives their training, have some in-country support as they, both from the instrument vendor as well as from the training laboratory, to make sure that they're totally comfortable with routine operation, troubleshooting, and minor emergencies that come up with any technology platform. And then have reach back support, both from the training laboratory as well as from the vendor for things that they can't address themselves. So that's my very general idea of what that model would look like. I also mentioned yesterday that it's not kind of fire and forget. You really need to have a commitment to some longer term support, I think, because a laboratory in that situation will learn things about their drug supply. They'll have questions. They'll need some guidance in terms of what information they're generating is valuable and what is maybe locally valuable, what is globally valuable, and how they can contribute to the information collection. So that's the boots on the ground piece of it. And then the other piece that we talked about is coordination or collation of that data between countries that already have it. We've talked about a lot of different in-country systems that share data within countries, but we don't do a good job of making those networks interconnected. And then integrating new analytical sites or analytical resources or data streams from currently unrepresented jurisdictions, integrating them into the data network. So that's a start.
Thank you. That's a very rich start. Thank you so much. But sorry, before Simona, but in terms of the actual language of recommendation 1, do you think you're okay with that that sort of description? Yeah. Does that sound okay? Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Those are all good recommendations in terms of the implementation phase, which is the next piece that we'll get into in the coordination with UNODC and others.
Yes, I was reading the recommendation. I absolutely agree everything with Barry. What I'd like to say to add is that very simple, that as we talked yesterday, for all of this, we need money, we need funds, and we need the control of global coalition. I mean, we train many investigators all over the world, but the problem is that they have to find money to come to Italy and to be trained. And then they have to find money to buy an instrument if they don't have money. In some countries they have, in some other they don't. But if this is under the control of global coalition, maybe this can be easier. I mean, if we have an aim, the aim of training for who would like to receive a training in America, in Europe, or in other countries provided with instruments, maybe global coalition can facilitate this access, because theoretically fantastic, but then the money, the permission to come assist. Like in the WADA anti-doping laboratories, when there are countries which don't have an anti-doping laboratories, all the other assist that country, and the WADA helps financially also. So maybe this is very awful, but can be very useful because this is a real solution. Assist the country who wishes to improve drug composition analysis or wastewater analysis, for example. Thank you.
Thank you, Simona. I think that that's a very important point, the point of resources. And in our process and methodology, I mean, it would have been easy for me to say, INL has resources. Here's my little stack of funds that INL can dedicate to this effort. And we carve it up and we're done. And we are kind of discussing different ideas for that small amount. But that, I think, wouldn't do a service to the aims of the Global Coalition. We don't have other donors at the moment. There was one other state that sort of pledged, but they haven't said the amount. And they said, well, tell us where do we sign the check to? It's like, well, there's no global fund that's been created. So find the initiatives of interest from the menu and directly contribute to those. That will be our message during the CND when we meet with other donor countries also to see how we coordinate some of that work. But for me, it's creating the full menu of what's necessary and what the cost is of that necessary line of effort. And then sharing with other donors, with the international community, this is what the need is. So I'm hoping that through this methodology, we'll either be able to identify the resources or identify the insufficiency of the level of effort for what's necessary. But I want to document what we need, not what we can get with this kind of amount of funding. I recognize it could be a bit frustrating, and I don't want to set expectations that all of these resources are going to come through the Global Coalition, because we simply don't know at this stage. But if we don't do this level of effort, we just won't get to the what's necessary to build. And I think that that's probably an important contribution that we could all make to the process. Benoit.
Hi, Benoit Chambaud, Drug Analysis Service, Health Canada. I really like what Barry just said. I think it's pretty complete. If we go back to the statement number one, in terms of the wording, I think one of the key element that is missing, or maybe missing, or could be included in technical assistance, is sharing of standard reference material, not just the material, but the literature. So when we talk about NPSs, sometimes there's nothing out there. It's a new substances. Some countries have the possibility to do characterization, to create some nice report, monograph, or stuff like that. I think could be something of interest for others to share as well, because we may not see something that the United States have seen, and if we see it for the first time, we just don't know what it is because it's new. So if we already have access to reference material or literature, could be. So I don't know how to phrase it. I don't know if it's something different. You mean sharing of standard material, not just material, because material that means license and permit, but the literature. So that could be something to include. It's easy to share, to provide, to create a depository where people could just put their stuff there. So maybe that's something to consider as well.
Yes, Inshik.
I think the idea of the development of global forensic network. Should I introduce myself again? Shikshim, UNODC, Bangkok. Development of global forensic network. I think that can be done better if we strengthening the existing regional forensic network. Yesterday, I talked to Barry because in Asia there is an AFSN, Asia Forensic Science Network. In Europe, there is another modality there, but I don't think that there is a, like interregional discussions or networking among these existing forensic networks. I think that item A, number 4 is somewhat related to that angle, but if we can add somewhere like strengthening the existing regional networks, something like that would be great. Yeah. Regional and interregional, strengthening existing regional forensic networks for the purpose of enhancing interregional coordination or something like that.
Good. Thank you. Yes, Barry?
I think that that's a great point, because it may be that, first of all, it may be that there are a lot of laboratories and small networks out there that already have data. They're just not reporting it. So again, integrating them into the network, like Asian Forensic Science Network, how many of the laboratories within that organization are already reporting their data, and is there a way to recruit them? I can say that from personal experience that can be difficult. One of the projects that we've worked on with Colombo Plan is the International Toxic Adulterants Database, or the ITAD project, where we have a number of countries that have been reporting adulteration patterns. But it can be very difficult to get consistent data collected because a lot of these countries are struggling with just keeping up with the day-to-day work of the things they have to do to get their jobs done. And this is something else we're asking them to do on top of that with, you know, for the good of the global community. So it takes a lot of, as the EMCDDA folks yesterday like to say, it takes a lot of picking up the phone and cajoling people and reminding them and encouraging them and showing them how their data is being used and what kind of impact it has. But certainly that encouragement to participate and finding ways to make new contributing laboratories feel like part of a greater whole is a way to accomplish some of what Inshik is suggesting. The other thing is that he's exactly right, that many of the laboratories may not need a new piece of technology. They may just need guidance on how to use it in a way that's consistent, that will generate data consistent with the data model and data scope that we're looking to collect from, you know, globally. And then one other observation, which I think is a nice case study, is that it's not always a $100,000 piece of equipment that is necessary to solve a local problem. We had a incident this year where we were contacted by the National Laboratory in Nigeria, who had a problem with the appearance of diverted pharmaceutical fentanyl in their country. And that was really their first exposure or experience with fentanyl. They didn't have a means for testing for it. We were able to source some fentanyl test strips, which are really designed for urine testing, but we had validated them for use in seized material testing. We recorded a video, sent them 5 boxes of test strips, and they were able to very quickly verify the identity of the material that they had. So understanding what the problem is or what the need is and designing an appropriate level of response, I think, is an important part of responsible use of whatever resources there are.
Thank you. Very good points. Yes, Simona.
Okay, sharing the standards. You mean pure standards of substances? No, the protocol standards. Okay, because sure. And this maybe can also be done with some online educational training. Sometimes this only is useful to gather people together so that we can know each other and maybe exchange experiences. Maybe my experience cannot be applied in another region with no sources, but the fact that we talk all together and we share experiences can be a first step. And online educational programs like in TIAFT, for example.
But in the recommendation, should we qualify that word sharing of what kind of standards, reference standards, or is there a word that we should be adding? Or is it just sharing standards?
Process standards,
Yeah,
standard operating
actually,
procedures.
actually, you could fall into technical assistance because if you need to know how to work with your GCMS, your LCMSs. But my point was more if there's any new substances that you're not aware of because you're in a country where there's no fentanyl issue, let's say, and there's new fentanyl analog and you don't have the standard. I'm not mentioning about the material, but the paperwork, the monograph. So you have a spectra, you don't know what it is. It's not in any bank of spectra. So we need to share that information because it's the base of any identification. So I thought standard could be viewed as the whole big picture. But of course, it's closely linked to technical assistance because without that reference, you cannot identify anything. So and vice versa. So. Yeah, maybe just sharing of references. Yeah, it could be shared a reference more than standards, yeah. Or a reference standard.
It's okay.
It's references.
So sharing of reference standards is a problem practically because of import-export licensing, customs regulations. We work closely with a number of colleagues in Brazil, and from the time they order a standard from one of the suppliers, it can be over a year before they receive it. One of the, I think, innovative things UNODC has done is with their ICE program, their international collaborative exercises, where they're sending materials that are basically proficiency testing materials that they have qualified in the lab in Vienna to laboratories in numerous countries. So they're basically providing a small amount of the drug, which is sufficient for purposes of characterization, putting it in their database, getting a retention time, and giving them the capability of the laboratory, the capability of detecting it and reporting it forensically. So that model has worked quite well. We participate in that, for example. I know several other countries that don't have access to standards, and they really value that participation. So encouraging labs to participate in the ICE program. We've done something similar with by sending NPS or extracts of biological samples that have been spiked with NPS. So it's a tiny amount of drug that's being shipped. It's in the nanogram level, but again, it's sufficient to be reconstituted and injected as under the umbrella of a proficiency testing program. So with one of the Colombo Plan International our technical assistance programs, we sent those kits to 4 different countries or 5 different countries in South America who were able to, and we provided them with the columns, we provided them with the method, we provided them with materials to validate the method in their own laboratory, and sent them the extracts that they were able to use to add compounds to their scope of testing. So there are ways to get around that where you're not actually shipping usable amounts of drug.
Thank you so much. Seru and then Mona. And then after Simona, we'll move on to the next one so we can,
Thank you. It's Seru from Fiji Police. Just on sharing of reference, where would we fit accreditation of laboratories in that, so that we are aligned to one global standard, so that our systems and processes are covered under that global standard where all laboratories are aligned towards.
thank you so much. So accreditation of laboratories.
Yes.
In forensic capacity. That could be improve through the provision of forensic laboratory equipment, mentoring, technical assistance, sharing of references, accreditation, and the development of. Okay.
A general comment. As I told you yesterday, Global Coalition should create leaders who can then talk to other leaders and globally established how we can go on. For example, Barry for this part regarding improving drug composition. So keep in touch with others and decide together. These are ideas, but we have to share them. And finally, we have to create a protocol.
Yes.
No, for all the points. One leader for all the points who can contact the other. For example, database of substances. There is one EMCDDA. We have one in our Italian early warning system. There are many, but we have to share them or to harmonize them.
Yes, and as we get into the initiative development, I think that's where we start kind of building those linkages as well. So I'd like to move on to the next one so we don't run out of time, which is to institutionalize sustainable and recurring data collection systems through the establishment of national drug observatories and regional epidemiology networks. We heard about the Colombian experience, we heard about the Italian experience at the national levels, and then we learned about the epi networks at the regional levels. I think the idea that we were thinking is sort of reconstituting the international epidemiology working group and then establishing regional working groups where those may be missing through this recommendation. But if it's not apparent with the language, please help us, Charles.
Thanks. Just a couple of points to start with. Perhaps add in, and after data collection, analysis and reporting. So to institutionalize sustainable and recurring data collection, analysis and reporting systems. I'm just putting this on the table. If people don't like it, then as comment. And then at the end of that, at the end of the sentence there, with the purpose of strengthening early warning systems. That was a point brought in by, what's his name, at UNODC when these were shared. Anyway, doesn't matter. No, the other, one of the guys. No, it doesn't matter. It was, no, not here at this meeting, before the meeting. Anyway, one of the guys who sits in and writes the reports for us. So yeah, with so that's the only change I had for that one. I have changed for 3. Should I carry on while I've got the microphone? So for 3, okay, and then I've got a 4th one too. Like wastewater analysis, rapid situational assessments. That's the sort of CDC type thing I was saying, where you go in and you say, we have something going on. We're not going to wait for secondary data. We're going to go in and find what's happening on the ground. So that's there. And then a point 4 after that would be the point about consider establishing a platform like the International Epidemiology Working Group to facilitate, the wording I don't have properly, but to facilitate, well, the collection and analysis of global level data. Yeah. And it also helps facilitate the lower level activities at the same time, because you have this global mechanism. It puts pressure on the national observatories and the regional to do their work. So it helps keep the flow of information going both ways. Because you have that mechanism up here, you have to start collecting data further down. Otherwise, there's huge gaps in it. Yeah.
And Charles, you think that's distinct from number 2? You see number 2 and 4? Because
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Whether it's part of 2. But I thought if it's maybe important enough to have as its own, so that after reflecting all that in my own head, I thought it needs its own point. But I did consider whether it should be part of 2.
But I would ask what the initiatives might be, because the next piece will be operationalizing, and it's not for today, but we'd come back to you and say, well, what is the initiative to operationalize number 2 and number 4? If it's the same one, we could, drop 2 into 4 or 4 into 2 and make it 1 if there's one initiative.
You're probably right. Now that I reflect on it, it's probably better as one. And they all feed up to an international forum network.
Yes, because so then the initiative would be, well, we'd have to find what home would be, who would be the home for the International Epidemiology Working Group instead of network. Would it be WHO, UNODC, UNIDA, is it AMCDDA? So we'd have to find a natural home for this.
Would be
You think
off the top
UNODC?
one.
Yeah. So if it's UNODC, then the idea would be initiative. UNODC's International Epidemiology Working Group, with then the subcomponents of regional epidemiology working groups where those are missing. And so that structure would go under just one recommendation instead of spread across.
I think you're right.
multiple.
You're right.
Yes, and check.
I'm just wondering whether it's the right time to add certain region as well. For instance, in number 2, we have discussed that there is a lack of data collection system in the Pacific, for instance. I think that should be highlighted so that we don't miss the region has not been well mapped in the global data collection framework. If it's possible, I would also like to add maybe Southeast Asia or Central Asia somewhere in the regional epidemiology networks, if it's possible.
Thank you. Yes, I think that we want to highlight that the regions and maybe Sarah, it's maybe to just better type it, including Charles. I think I actually like Charles' framing better than what I had for point 2. So we might flip it. We might drop 2 into the 4. But we for now, maybe if you could just type it, paste it there so we can see it all. Yes, so I agree with you, Inchik. I think development of regional epidemiology networks for B there to include Central Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific. Those 4 are the ones that stand out to me. I think we've got good coverage in the Americas and Europe and Africa and North America. So I think although I'll also ask Benoit, do we have in North America between the US and Canada a regional epi network, or are we more in silos in terms of information sharing? Because that we have a North American drug dialogue where we could also kind of highlight any lack of coordination on that front.
Yeah, I'm not personally involved in AP network, so I could check. I know that when Barry mentioned about the lab forensic network, I don't think we're part of it. Actually, not my lab, probably more Tox lab in Canada, perhaps, in the lab forensic network that you were mentioning. So we could look at this, but an EP network from Canada, I'm not sure. I know we have one in Canada. I'm not sure there's a link with the United States, so that's something to consider.
But we should definitely include your lab in the Colombo Plan initiative for sure. And I think that this is the type of opportunity where we can identify additional partners.
Yeah, I took a note, so we'll contact.
Sorry, I just wanted to make a little suggestion. I think for the Pacific, I'm not sure whether there is enough people working on epidemiology in the Pacific or region. Might not be a little bit too early to create a network among them in the Pacific. Judging by my experience with some of the countries, there's a very lack of people who work on those area. Might be better to have more general just data collection networks in the Pacific, because I think there is no really regional level drug data collection in the Pacific. Saru, do you agree with my assessment? Okay.
So,
Yeah, South Asia.
I haven't connected my internet this morning yet. Yesterday I was speaking with Seru, the PICP, Pacific
Island Chiefs
of Police, has a sub-regional forensic network. And I thought that was the place to connect our global epi network, and they do drug detection, I imagine, Seru. So I thought that was the network to connect to the global, but I don't know enough about it. So I defer to you all in terms of what would go there. But yes, it's sort of iterative that we would build on top of that. Let me at the same time just throw out the third one, since we've started discussing it, introducing and expanding innovative drug data collection techniques. And that's to kind of leave a broad space to say wastewater analysis, rapid assessments, web-based clinical screening tools like the Assist, through training, technical assistance, in order to provide greater clarity and precision with respect to drug use and trafficking. If we wanted to add more to that list beyond wastewater, rapid situational assessments, and web-based clinical screening tools, feel free to speak now. Yeah.
I forgot, I didn't read my writing. There was also, it's also around analytic tools and data visualization. So I don't know where we would fit that in, but AI for data collection, but I'm sure there are things we could improve with an analysis and data visualization. But AI is part of the data collection as well. So it needs to go up perhaps next to rapid situation assessments, like what we heard yesterday in Europe with the sort of scraping what's going on in the dark web and things like that.
Yes, AI data collection tools. The data visualization piece is maybe one also of providing access to and sharing with experts in a sort of digestible way, but I'm not sure if it fits within. It could be under two. It could be its own. It could. Well, yes, I think it fits nicely within two. I will say that we haven't gone to the next sub-working group. Sub-working group 2.2 is about data sharing. So it might be that's where we want to highlight sort of making tools accessible to the public or policymakers or sort of technical experts to be able to make informed decisions. Any other items, any other recommendations, please?
Hello, Franco Tagliaro from Verona. My proposal applies only to opiate drugs. But in my opinion, relatively simple new approach could be to implement a system for, let's say, immediate monitoring on the use of naloxone in all over the country, no? In order to have update day by day of how to say, not just the number of intoxications, but also on the gravity of the intoxication, because you know that the most potent opioids need 5 and more times dosage of the antidote. And this, it's this information is already available at the hospital level or department level. And if it would be possible to collect and evaluate this data, in my opinion, could be a, let's say, a early, really early warning tool to monitor the phenomenon.
Nico, this is very interesting what you're proposing. I don't know enough about the US system in terms of how much of this we are collecting, but for example, in Italy, do the hospitals report to the ISS when naloxone is used? Is that something that would be easy to be able to extract from the national public health system?
Yes, but of course, this approach should maintain the granularity of the phenomenon. Merging the data would blind totally the possibility of using this approach.
Yeah, no, I like the idea. I think it's very important because it could show patterns and changes, and also the number of times that naloxone has to be administered can show the potency of also the opiates that are being consumed and the difficulty of maybe the adulterants that are kind of interacting with that. I mean, could indicate that there might be something there. So that is good. I could see that in terms of data. I could also see it within the 3.2 sub-working group, which relates to addressing also substance use and people with substance use disorders as a measure. But it is very much data focused. So that I think does fit more within 2.1. Yeah, thank you very much for that recommendation.
Keep coming back, Charles Perry from South Africa. Under 2C, I think we spent a lot of time talking about capacity building, and we talked about the need for tools. We talked about the global assessment package of the UNODC, which was like a training manual for countries on how to set up epidemiology networks. And also, I think the word twinning came up. So you have countries that have these networks, data collection systems helping other countries. So capacity building is key in parts of the world where not much is happening. So there has to be some tools that can help countries get ahead quickly to see what is needed. It's not that complicated to set up a system collecting data from treatment centers and from the police arrest and seizure data, but they need to be shown examples of how it can be done. So that's an important part of it. It was the GAP program. It's the global assessment program. Those tools, Angela was saying, they need to be updated. They've got the manuals. It's a manual on how to collect data in various ways, from schools, household surveys, to treatment center data, to so forth. So those tools need to be upgraded, and
Thank you, Charles. I think it leads me also then to say, do we not need to have something on capacity building or training within the recommendation of number 2, data collection analysis, reporting systems. I mean, it might be implicit that there needs to be capacity building in that as well. Yeah, facilitating and institutionalize. Yeah, to facilitate and institutionalize. I was also going to just say to the previous point that we probably want to make 3B its own recommendation under 2.1. So it would be 4, not 3B. And let me know if this sort of fits. To develop, so the new recommendation 4, to develop data reporting systems of naloxone provision in the public health system? No? Yes. Is that, does that cover it, or if there's any modifications, let me know. Any other recommendations for subworking group 2.1? Again, on data collection. Yes, Inshik.
I think I wanted to mention the Pacific one more time, because I think Pacific, although I don't really recommend for the building of regional epidemiology networks in the Pacific, but the Pacific should be somewhere located in the just general drug data development in the regions. If you could add as one of the elements, as a D or something like that on the number 2 recommendation, that would be great. Regional data collection platforms in the Pacific.
But Inshik, while you're saying that there shouldn't, that maybe the forensic network is a bit premature, wouldn't the first step be to build an epidemiology network? Those are two different things, right? The forensic and the epi network. So
Right.
so what is step one? Is step one to do an epi network in the Pacific?
For me, I think the both epi network and forensic networks, I think they should first have some sort of like a agreed data collection platform within the Pacific, because at the moment the countries do not really have that level of the data collection. I mean, police have their own data, customer own data, the Ministry of Health, they don't really have a data, to be honest. In many of the countries, they have like qualitative information, that not the quantitative informations. But if there is some platform that everybody gather together, and what will be the data that will be collected at the national level, and then they discuss at the regional level, that they will share those information. And you mentioned about the PICP, this forensics, PICP like meeting once a year, and then there is some of the working groups, and at the moment their types of information that generated by them is not really something that can be built as some network. Only country in the Pacific that have some forensic informations, Fiji and some of the country that former like colonies of the countries like France, or the others really need a lot of support. So if I think the just general step for the Pacific is to agree on the kind of assessing what they have, and then build agreed data collection platforms in the region, that would be great. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. I almost feel like the Pacific meeting where we are hoping to have, and I think we're talking about July or around mid-July, to have the 3 themes of the 3 working groups will be very heavily focused on data first and foremost, to know what's happening in each of the supply and demand, or working groups 1 and 3 will be very much oriented toward, as you're saying, let's develop a platform to be able to understand what the nature of the situation is, to then know how best to address it. I wanted to also highlight, I guess what's also missing from, well, let me ask if it's missing from the list. Do we have covered the broader reporting tools like the ARQ, the drug monitoring platform, the WHO Atlas sort of survey of drug use? Do we feel that that's covered within number 2, for example? Or should we have a distinct item, a distinct recommendation to support global data collection? What do we call them? Data collection systems or reports, or how would you care as our UNODC representative here? How could we, if you could help us make sure that we're not leaving behind some of the global platforms, which ultimately we want all of these different data systems to provide input into those global reports? How could we frame that?
You want to go first?
Yeah, go first.
I wonder if you could do it this way, and you might not. After, with the purpose of strengthening early warnings systems, and international data collection platforms, or regional international data collection platforms like the ARQ. Yeah. You know, yeah. Yeah. DMP?
DMP, yes.
But then you could have sub-points how that will happen, or, you're going to have harmonization so that the burden's not too great on countries. So you need to look at harmonization of systems, strengthening and harmonization of lower level systems so that with the international systems, there's things that have to happen.
Yes, let me just highlight that I think when we get into the initiatives, we're going to have quite a number of them, which is fine under this point 2, because we can have ARQ and DMP and making these fit here. We also have the Observatory of the Organization of American States. We have the African Union PAENDU network in whatever shape or form, but it all feeds into kind of this broader sort of international work. But yes, I mean, yes, it says there, yeah, regional epidemiology networks. So that in parentheses could be, okay. So like regional epi networks, comma, ARQ inside the parentheses. Regional, yes, epi networks, yes. That's fine. Yeah. Okay, yes.
Could we make it collection and dissemination platforms maybe as well? Because I think it also needs to be what we get out of it.
That's right. Yes, Inchik.
It's just from my point of view, the now is too long. Would it be possible to just have this all part of the data collection dissemination platform, like regional epi network, to the down as somewhere in the D, maybe, make it looks more.
Yes, I will say, however, when we publish this, we're not going to publish A, B, C, D. We're just publishing one recommendation. Because that might be very confusing in a laundry list of 100 recommendations to then have sub sections. So apologies if we're not clear. The recommendation that we're publishing is what is above, not the letters below. I think we're just taking notes. So facilitate and institutionalize sustainable and data and recurring data collection, analysis, and reporting systems through the establishment of national drug observatories and regional epi networks with the purpose of strengthening early warning systems and international data collection and dissemination platforms. And then you could say, e.g., regional epi networks. Well, if we list PAENDU, then we are not listing the others, and the European Union has some, and the US and others. So I would maybe delete like PAENDU, just say regional epi networks, comma, ARQ, comma, DMP. So
would it be possible to add like UNODC early warning or advisory on NPS? So EWA.
So after DMP,
EWA.
EWA,
Right.
early warning advisory.
Yeah.
Etc. Okay. Okay. Any other points for this one for 2.1? Okay. So if we move to 2.2, we're now talking about, we've talked about collecting information, and I know there was a little bit on information sharing up there, which is okay. But now we're getting into more of information sharing, interagency collaboration, and policy formulation. And let me just say, when we talk about interagency collaboration, our initial thought wasn't collaboration between countries' agencies, but it very well could be. If we've got a forensic laboratory in one country and another, that these two agencies collaborate across borders. But also interagency collaboration is within one country, how does law enforcement, which tests and collects this information and looks at, what the composition of drugs is, share that data with the health ministry? So it's having partnerships between agencies in the same government where many times they're siloed and there isn't a sharing of. This happened very well in Argentina, for example, where they went and tested tens of thousands of cases of the drug composition and then shared it with public health. And then they had national forums that were televised with the press saying, here's what law enforcement found and here's what it means for public health. And so having interagency collaboration within one country, where many times our governments will work in silos, and breaking those silos down. So that's the idea there. In terms of the recommendations, you'll notice that we have focused a lot more on the policy formulation side, because we think that this is an important piece that we can't leave behind, but not because we don't think that information sharing and interagency collaboration aren't important. We welcome your contributions in terms of what those recommendations might be. In short, the first one is developing, resourcing and assessing national drug control strategies and synthetic drug action plans through the support from international and regional organizations. Why? Because many countries do not have national drug control strategies. We did an exercise in the Americas. There are 35 countries in the Western Hemisphere, and we found that well over half either didn't have, but in most cases had drug control strategies that were out of date. They had expired 3, 4, 5 years ago, and there was no active strategy to work on. And if you don't have a strategy, then you don't have the initiatives or programs contained within them with the funding and with the evaluation tools. And so you're missing kind of the drive of your government's policies and programs with regard to addressing the issue. So it is very important to have that in place. But another innovation that has come through UNODC and through the synthetic drugs program has been to also work with governments to develop specific action plans that can kind of be built on top of the national strategies that exist in specifically addressing the synthetic drug issues that are being found within countries. And we're very proud to support UNODC's work in East Africa this year in several countries to develop synthetic drug action plans. And we think this could be a very good way forward for many countries to develop their own through the technical assistance of UNODC experts that help in the design of these, aligning with and supporting those national strategies. I will also say that we have a very good curriculum through the Organization of American States, which is now part of our Universal Curriculum series on developing national drug strategies. It's a course, a training course for about 3 days for policymakers in governments, cross-ministerial, that come together and look at the components of building their national drug strategies. And so this year we are asking the Organization of American States to share it with the African Union, so that through the African Union, where we have well over half the countries that don't have national drug strategies, that we can work as a deliverable of this item in building that. So I just want to express sort of what that recommendation is. The second recommendation is developing legislative and policy initiatives, excuse me, and the adoption by legislative and executive bodies through the development of an international network for legislation on illicit drugs. I think the issue of illicit drugs became problematic for our UN colleagues in reflecting on the title. So we could just say legislation on drugs and take out the word illicit and change the I to an O in the acronym. So the idea here is to have a legislative sort of network and to create model laws across the entire sort of spectrum. And the last is to have recurring meetings of regional partners to assess evolving regional synthetic drug challenges and develop regional responses through dialogue, policy adoption, coordinated action, and implementation. I know it's time for coffee and we cannot let our coffee get cold. So food for thought. We'll come back after the coffee break. I think we might do the tour after that as well. Right? Or no?
We will take fast coffee break please sign and tell us if you did not receive the certificate of attendance. Did you receive? Le abbiamo dato il certificate? Sì. If anyone needs a more specific certificate of attendance, or if you did not collect, please, it's the time to sign and collect. We take a fast coffee break. We go to the museum and then we come back. Take your bags and personal belongings. Don't leave it. Yeah, sure. Money, take your money with you.
Quite productive.
Yes. We're almost there.
It's a, and also then to look at what the data mean for policy, for practice, for research and things like that. So there needs to be a practical, response rather than just, this is interesting trends.
Yeah. Yeah, it needs to tie into practical application.
So
of
we have
the data.
a section in our reports on the policy implications of the research, of the data that's presented.
Very good.
Policy implications for policy and practice. Yeah.
That is something that should be mainstreamed, I think, with all of the data collection tools, is how does this translate? What is the impact of that? Yeah, very good.
Very quickly, in terms of the wording, you have resourcing in that one, which we didn't have in the 2.1. So maybe just to make sure that temper the expectation, or we define what resourcing should mean, because people could say, yeah, there's some.
Yes, thank you. Yes, what I was thinking is, in reflection of what comes after national drug control strategies, we need to develop drug control strategies. We need to make sure they're resourced, that there are financial resources that support the national drug control strategies, and that they are evaluated for impact, effectiveness. And so those three segments are referring to what comes right after, which are the drug control and the action plans as well.
Matteo Marti from Ferrara University. So I suggest to put in the point 2.1 the preclinical research and the translational information
New number
between
5.
preclinical investigation and clinical emergency evidence. So we talked about that last day. So
could you help us frame once again? Could you just say it one more time so we can write it?
Well, I can, in order to.
The recommendation, it would be a brand new recommendation. What would the new recommendation be? To develop?
Yeah, to develop translational information between preclinical research and emergency room and clinical evidence. Okay, just to find evidence regarding the antidotal treatment, new antidotal treatment, interaction between NPS, synthetic drugs, and of course all drugs, but between NPS. So we have to look in advance before that they increase toxicity in humans. So this is translation information, preclinical research, evidence, emergency room. Yeah, more or less we can.
Thank you.
What do you think also, Barry Logan in the other, what do you think about this point? So I just put this, but what do you suggest? Also between forensic toxicology. So
yeah, I think that's definitely an important part of when in the timeline of when new substances are discovered. I mean, we know typically they come to our attention because they've caused some harm. Either somebody's in the emergency room or somebody has died. And what I talked about yesterday was really the focus on the first part, the identification. But once you know about it, you know it's in the population, you know it's a problem, then it's important to get more specific information on its potency, its potential lethality, the way it interacts with other drugs. So all of that, what you're calling preclinical research, leads to a better understanding in terms of the interpretation of these substances.
I have a quick comments on, I think number 4 and number 5 can be somehow merged in a way. I think that they are talking about not very too far apart points. But I think for number 1, for working group 2.2, is it possible to adding word implementing national drug control strategy after assessing? Because I think developing is one thing, but implementing is another. Because I think it might be helpful. Resourcing, assessing, and implementing. I think implementing can be the last word. And then, if I may, one more point. I think we missed one point is more for like law enforcement supply side. I don't see that they are not featured here either in 2.1 or 2.2. The Angela mentioned about the data sync for itself or something like that. I think that means that it has to have some sort of like a context to be given in the data that we collect. I think maybe number 3, that there is a point on the regional partners to assess evolving users challenges and stuff. Maybe if we can add some like a law enforcement elements there somehow, that would be great.
Thank you. Donata Favretto, University of Padova. Okay. Favretto from Padova. I would like to insert somewhere something about educational option. If we would be able to create a drug recognition expert, I don't know, in the course of chemistry or in other sanitary schools, just to develop the skills of those, how they can recognize it and then can spread their knowledge and use their knowledge to be part of the recognition system.
Thank you so much. Do you mean to be able to train and educate the workforce in identification of
Yes.
And do you think
because you need to have a practical skill to identify, you have to know, and then you could you can become an employee in the future. But if you learn how to identify drugs and how also to connect from the epidemiological point of view all the data, it's a skill that can be used for the sanitary system.
And could you help us also envision where? Is it with universities? Is it with institutes? Where
to place this?
Where to place that training, that knowledge transfer?
It could be in Italy. We have what we call specialization schools that are after graduation, but I don't know in other countries how the system could be. We have 3 years courses that can be pharmaceutical chemistry or chemistry or environment chemistry, and to put also drug chemistry, drug of abuse chemistry and recognition. I don't know in other countries.
I think that this can be done in the forensic laboratory networks. For example, within the early warning system, there is a network of forensic laboratories. They can teach, they can form law enforcement.
Yes, but if our university, the national policy is to create these experts, to study for having these experts, and then of course, they can be either chemical, biochemists, or engineering, I don't know, but they should learn how to recognize drugs.
So this is a good moment to also share, because I see there's a lot of Italian colleagues that are from the university system. Thank you, Simona, for finding the perfect audience to come for the meetings. So it reminds me to also make a plug for the International Consortium of Universities for Drug Demand Reduction, also for our international experts. As you go back to your countries, ICU DDR, and you can see their website, icuddr.org, is a consortium of universities that was created by INL in 2016 because universities kept coming to us and saying, we need to create more programs on addiction studies to understand the composition of drugs, to be able to learn the science of addiction and how we do these efforts. And what we realized is that the field of drugs is a complex, multidisciplinary field of study that requires its own unique department or program, or so that it can not be independent of, but reliant on many different disciplines. And what we've done, this consortium now has over 430 universities from, I don't forget how many countries. You could see the listing on the website. But from Italy specifically, as we were discussing during the break, I've noticed there are 2 universities only from Italy that are members. From Rome, we've got University of Rome Tor Vergata, that is a member, and from Trento, University of Trento. So we only have 2, but we should have many more universities also, because the role is research, also development of academic programs. ICUDDR has developed over 60 academic programs since it was founded in 2016 with universities, masters, PhDs, counseling, policy, forensics. So there's a lot of opportunities there to work with that consortium and like-minded universities to connect. And so the last thing I'll say is, in the Global Coalition website, there's a tab that says universities. You can find at the bottom that there is a registration form if you are interested in joining some of the conversations that we are not a part of. It's only for universities to be able to discuss the Global Coalition. Thank you, Sarah. You see the dates there. If you could scroll down just a little bit. Europe is today. Today at 10 a.m. Washington, D.C. time, which is 4 p.m. our time today. So this afternoon at 4 p.m., there is the European universities coming together to discuss the Global Coalition. And then there's going to be a second round in a couple of months where universities and the coalition governments will come together to discuss recommendations. And these would be very important recommendations to also include there. Thank you.
Concerning the information sharing, as I told you, all of you yesterday, here at the Institute, we have online platform for health formation of health professional for everything, COVID, bacterial infections, everything. And the cost to go to this platform and to put a formation program is relatively low, and you can reach everyone everywhere in the world. And we did also for other, for example, for therapeutic cannabis, for fetal alcohol syndrome, and is organized as a series of tests, video, and finally you obtain a certificate. So within the 2.2 information sharing, I think that online it is called e-learning. E-learning through institutional platforms. Edwis is one of them. And for us, it's very easy. We receive slides, videos from all over the world, and we can mount a course on whatever specific item you wish. So e-learning, because e-learning can reach, for example, we reached India, all the Indian laboratories 3 years ago for a drugs of abuse and doping course.
Yes, you're singing my song. That is, we are also very much proponents of a lot of our curriculum we've translated now onto e-learning platforms. And so there are self-led, instructor-led courses, and we find that this is a good way to scale up and disseminate. In some regions or some countries, we found slower adoption, but it is, I think, a very good model moving forward. And for us, I think it's essential to scale up, being able to use e-learning to scale up and reach more practitioners around the world. Yes, Inshik.
I'm gonna retract what I said about law enforcement. I think I wanted to say more like intelligence analyst, who looking at the situation. So I think instead of law enforcement, maybe intelligence analyst would be better. You know, maybe you can put it on the A, meaning among intelligence analysts on number 3. Yes.
I will also just highlight, because we are only publishing the recommendation. If you want to propose a new recommendation, develop a network of intelligence analysts for the sharing of information, that could also be so that it's not sort of so implicit that it doesn't get published in the
Okay.
on the website.
Would you be able to make it a number 4, please?
Number 4, yeah.
Because there is no such a meeting at the regional level or global level, I believe.
Yes. So develop regional. So the action would be to develop a regional network or meeting of intelligence analysts to exchange real-time information on drugs.
Okay, Hetty from DGC Indonesia. Can we also, after this early warning system, can we also encourage actions which touching the family system? Like we are talking about early warning systems, the system that we hope that we can inform us something that happened and need to do something with it. But can we deeper and touch the people who are in trouble with drugs and encourage them to build the strength within them? So we just don't do I don't know, how can I say it in
You're
English?
saying, if I understand correctly, it's developing data collection systems that can capture sort of consumption data or what's happening with users or
Yeah,
at the community level.
deeper, and we can acknowledge who's the problem. Perhaps you can help me to talk.
We're at the community level.
Yeah, community level.
Community level.
Family and community level.
Data collection techniques. Part of this is the web-based clinical screening tool, the Assist, is one way to do that. But that is if you're entering substance use treatment with a substance use disorder. Of 100% of people that will use drugs, maybe about 10% have a substance use disorder, the addiction. The other 90% need brief intervention, general counseling, and they won't be captured typically because there's no screening by primary care physicians of substance use in most cases. So yes, it's there, but we need more. And I think that's probably what you're reflecting, that where are the data collection systems outside of expensive household surveys or maybe some rapid assessment surveys that are sort of imprecise. You need the harm reduction programs to communicate. And that leads me a little bit in my mindset as you're speaking to engaging NGOs, local organizations, to be able to better provide data that captures what's happening at the community level with family, with youth in terms of drug consumption. So that does feel like a new recommendation. I felt it was going to come from the Vienna NGO committee, frankly, that because I've kind of heard echoes of this, but it's nice to hear it from the government side as well, to say these would speak to each other, to develop closer collaboration with local organizations to capture data of local drug consumption patterns and trends in the community.
Can figure out where the data comes from and touch them, literally help them build the program, not only read the data.
And that's a very also important reaction. And I think it kind of goes for everything. It's great to collect data, but we have to actually act on this data and try to have an impact in terms of what we do, empowered with this information.
Yes.
So that kind of goes to 2.2, which is the development of public policies and actions that support the response to its information sharing, convening entities that will discuss this, and then implementing action plans.
Okay.
Could we have something like establish protocol and global platform for information exchange, rapid exchange of information relating to cross-border threats?
Okay, number 5. Do you want to You want to repeat that so Sarah can type it?
Yeah, establish protocol and global platform. Sorry, global platform.
No, yeah, establish
The
protocols,
protocols, right?
and
Yeah,
global-
yeah,
protocols and global platforms.
yeah, or maybe just platform
Ah.
for rapid exchange of information relating to cross-border threats.
Yes, I've got a few deliverables in mind on that one too. So that is a very good kind of top line aspirational goal that we can then operationalize with concrete action.
Just under 3, like a sub theme, this could also occur at regional epi meetings, epi surveillance meetings. You could have a specific focus on what's happening with synthetic drugs. You could have your regular meeting covering everything, and then you could have a specific, let's hone in on what's happening with synthetic drugs, if that's a particular focus. You don't have to convene special meetings for synthetic drugs. You could also incorporate it in ongoing meetings.
So I like that, but I actually would recommend that we do a whole new recommendation on that because I wouldn't want that to be buried. And I think as an action, so not a project, but an action, it's a very easy thing to do. And so the recommendation I think would be to let's see if I got it. Yes. Identify opportunities to, and I say the word mainstreaming the issue of synthetic drugs into associated forums or forums into relevant forums. I mean, what I'm thinking of is, yes, special meetings that relate to drugs in general, but I'm also thinking of the World Health Assembly, the global health meeting of whatever, to say, well, the issue of substance use needs to be there. And so trying to add our issue and raise it in visibility so that it's not buried within a Ministry of Health, non-communicable disease, mental health, and then you get to substance use, but elevating it and integrating it into other conversations. I think that's a very good recommendation because then the operationalization is incumbent on some of these other actors and, within our own ministries of health to then be able to elevate this issue higher.
And relevant global forums or regional forums, something.
Tell me where?
After drugs is relevant, like global forums.
Right, to relevant global and regional forums.
That's very good.
But that is intelligence analysts. So that is like a DEA analyst meeting with a Canadian analyst meeting with the. That is that's more an operational cell kind of here's our data, there's your data, kind of exchanging intelligence sharing. Okay, any other recommendations?
Just a very minor thing on the 2.1, on the first one, the second one, can we add ARQ, DMP, EWA, and Tox portal?
The Tox portal, that's
Yeah.
right. We've got to get in all the tools that you've mentioned.
Because I think that if we don't have that here, then some people might not be happy, so.
I'll also say we will review the presentations that you provided. Inchik, I'm thinking of yours in particular. You had like 4 slides where you very nicely said I think you said a very soft way ideas or suggestions, but there were the recommendations. So we could very much transform those into recommendations. We'll review those as well. And those that others have also mentioned, we're very appreciative from the presentations from yesterday. So we are coming about to the end of the session. I will say that this is not your last chance. We have until March 6 and 7 when the meetings take place, but we are going to have a meeting of the co-chairs. Do we remember the date? February 28th. We're going to ask for co-chairs on the 28th of February to come together if you're available prepare a little bit for this meeting coming up, March 6 and 7, and we'll do two sessions. We'll do an East and West session, but we're not going to do each individual sub-working group. So we'll,
20.
That would be the sub-work.
all right. You have to-
I have
Yes.
20.
That's the February meeting of the sub-working groups. So we're saying, in addition to the regular meetings that you would have in February, we would like one more meeting, please, of no participants, only the co-chairs of the working groups on the 28th of February.
February, and the purpose of this meeting is one, to prepare, because the March 6th and 7th meeting isn't going to be the same as
It's a
the regular. It's basically preparing everyone to report out on what's been happening, what the meeting's going to look like.
It's a special meeting, the meeting of March 6 and 7, and it's an important meeting for the coalition because the recommendations are then kind of more firm and they go on the website after that. Yes. Yes. It'll be, I think, 10 a.m. our time, 4
It's 9 a.m. our time, 9 p.m.
Yeah. So it'll be about 3 p.m., I think, Rome time. Now, if there's a conflict and you all cannot make it, we can also, share. We're preparing a document with you that will also provide you some guidance for that meeting. But the other purpose of that meeting is to discuss what we will do between April and August, and to also get ideas, because there are a few different things that we can do. We can have presentations by countries, we can have trainings, we can have civil society or private sector come and make presentations, or if you have a different idea, we could do something different with those hour blocks that we have during these months. So we want to leave it up to the co-chairs to tell us, for your sub-working groups, what do you think would be best? Because we can present ideas, have countries present, okay. But if you say, no, I think we should do training on policymaker training, or we should do whatever else, then we could use that time however you think will be helpful to advance the work of your sub-working group. So we'll look for your ideas, and we'll just kind of go sub-working group by sub-working group to then get your ideas of how you think we should handle from April to August, that time frame of meetings. So we are going to ask for some extra time, just 1 hour on February 28th to discuss that. If you're not available, that's okay. We can always continue by email and have that exchange. We're going to have one meeting for the East and one meeting for the West. So it's around the times that you normally have the meetings every month. So it should be a comfortable time, hopefully, for when you normally conduct the meeting. I mean, I'm not going to say what time of day because it's different for everybody. But then after that, we won't have another sub-working group meeting until the end of April. That will be the next meeting. So there are no other meetings in March, only these two meetings, the March 6th and 7th meeting, 1 hour each for each of the working groups. So that's only 3 hours of meetings, one for each working group. And we will prepare agendas for the working group co-chairs to call on the sub-working group co-chairs one by one to report on the progress that has been made. You can just share generally, we had these discussions, these presentations, and here are the recommendations that we have come up with for discussion. And then you make the recommendations and we open it up for the working group co-chairs to react, and then for the general participants, the public, the governments to react to that in the meeting.
Brian, Charles, I have one question about the March CND. You already explained a bit, but if you could explain one more time what will happen at CND on this coalition. And then I'm also interested, you mentioned something like you want to invite international partners, international community partners to also consider financing some of the recommendations. How is going to be done? And because I would like to also inform some of our partners as well.
At the CND, we will have numerous side events where different issues will be referencing coalition initiatives. Now we have the recommendations, we'll have initiatives. I would like to mention the chair of the CND, who's from Ghana, has created a campaign which is Pledge for Action. asking governments to pledge what areas they want to contribute to address the global drug situation. And they're building it off of the 11 themes or so from the 2019 declaration. So that's the foundation of the discussions for the high-level segment. I find those in complete alignment with the coalition deliverables. So my idea is, as countries are pledging for action, I believe that they're going to pledge for, more data collection systems and sharing and toxicology development and port security and public health measures. I think that those will very nicely also align and fit with the deliverables that we're looking at. Yes. What's that?
I'll put it in later.
Yeah. So what we're going to be looking at is side events, of course, but also maybe having a dedicated meetings for countries that may be interested in the coalition. I'm not asking which co-chairs are coming or not coming. We'll just have a room and we'll invite countries that are interested to come in, discuss some of those recommendations and deliverables. And then we are looking to have a meeting of donor countries as well, to establish one thing that's missing, and maybe it's going to be my recommendation I'm going to add to this list later, is to create a forum for donor countries to coordinate counter-narcotics support. And so there are donor countries that are already giving money to the drug control system, but we need to find out who's going to fund what. And in light of the many needs that we're going to have for the coalition, it'll be important to document which individuals in which countries could be part of this network and how often we can meet, just to make sure that we are coordinated and not duplicating efforts supporting the same thing, in multiple places.
Just a comment. Don't also like redundant things. I wonder the March 6th meeting will be basically presenting this slide, I think, to Grant and Simona. For example, at the March 6th, we've got to present what's been discussed. It's pretty much what's been typed.
Yes, but what you're not seeing is that we have shared this list, yes, with the co-chairs that are here, which are basically, all the ones that have been online also. But we've also shared it with our U.S. interagency as well. So there may be additional comments, and there may be comments from other countries, other governments as well. So the list might actually be much more expansive than what we have presently here. We'll be finalizing that document and sharing it with all of you as here's the sort of the final list that's accumulatively sort of come up. But ultimately, the sub-working group co-chairs have the purview, the responsibility of, if there's anything that's out of alignment or duplicative, or you want to further massage and edit the text, it's your recommendations to the working group co-chairs that matter in the end, because you are presenting the recommendations to the working group co-chairs. And it's the working group co-chairs that ultimately come to us and say, here's the list, INL, to put on the website. So you have final editorial ownership, I'd say, as co-chairs of this process, not INL, and then it goes on the website. And then other countries can continue providing recommendations, but they might be part of kind of a more extended list, but not the official list. That is what you are all coming up with for us. So the idea is that after the presentation, there's discussion time, but we all know how discussion time goes with the coalition meetings. We've only got 57 minutes of sort of total meeting time. So depending how long the reports are from sub-working group co-chairs to working group co-chairs, and how much sort of conversation from the co-chairs, that will then lead to how much discussion time we have for the participants. So I'd say maybe if we can keep it shorter, recognizing that many times countries don't speak up. So we might want to, as a strategy, maybe wait for the co-chairs of the working groups to wait and let the membership speak first before then they come in.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. We will share the documents by email beforehand. Everybody in the coalition will have the recommendations that we're going to
That would be good. So yeah, it'll either be a document or it'll be in a PowerPoint. People can read it, and then we don't have to spend time going through it again. We can rather spend time on discussion. So it'll depend on who's chairing that day. That's important. Yeah.
We have to ask them to come prepared, no? Because
just a logistical note too, the way that the recommendations will be shared is through the calendar invitation. And so also thinking about how that works too, people get calendar invites and hopefully they'll review it. But since in terms of co-chairing and like leading the meeting, it'll be the working group co-chairs that will be moderating.
Yes.
So you and Grant will.
So Simone and Grant will lead the West and then call on the sub-working group, you know, Benoit and Charles and others to kind of speak. Yeah.
I think we prepared a lot, no? Recommendation cannot be 15 pages. They have to be bullet points. So we will invite countries participant to the global coalition because sometimes many countries are not represented, many Europeans want. So I would like to share this idea with EMCDDA and other European partners. We come prepared so that, no?
They're kind of.
So we're having Charles Perry, we're having a discussion amongst each other, but I think it's relevant. I agree, you know, it'd be good to have it prepared. We're talking about high level matters at this point, rather than discussing the minutia of rolling out this operationally. So it's in our interest to do it efficiently and to have opportunity for feedback. And Benoit and I were talking what we think what should happen between April and August, or the first few months, is to have opportunity for feedback from all those people who have a stake in those areas that we have made recommendations. We want to get feedback rather than let's generate more and more ideas of what to do. I think it's much better to start getting their buy-in and responses. Then we've done the hard work. They must work harder.
That we can filter and keep me informed, you know, because I have to translate my mind in Italian and then in English.
Very good. Wonderful. Well, folks, it's 12 o'clock, which is lunchtime. Someone wants to say some things?
Before we go to lunch, do someone have the need of a taxi to go to the station or to the airport? To the Vatican. Let me know right now because I can book them for you. So at what time, you tell me at what time. Now we go, I think. At what time? At 1 o'clock. Antonella, un taxi a 12:30 per andare a Trastevere lo possiamo trovare? Da qui a Trastevere. Ok. Taxi for where? E un altro per il Colosseo a 12:30. No, 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 no. No. L'aeroporto non va nessuno. No one for the airport. Because this you have to book in advance. No, many of them, molti di loro rimangono perché vanno a cena stasera. It's San Valentine. Some concluding remarks before we go to lunch, because I think that after lunch we say bye-bye everybody at 12:30
Yes.
you have to go.
Yes. I'll be very very brief and appreciative. Thank you so much to everyone for participating, to our co-chairs, our international organization coordinators, our Italian hosts and colleagues that have come. Simona, your team has been incredible. It's just amazing. Great applause for them all. It was a very quick idea to do this, I think, a few months ago, and it's amazing how quickly you're able to mobilize to be able to bring this together. But we had kind of a sinking feeling at one point, like, oh, we really need to get together and share East and West coming together to get on the same page. And it was very interesting as the recommendations are coming out, seeing how we've kind of landed in similar places. But it didn't sound like that when we were kind of before. So I'm very happy by the outcome of the meeting. And I think that now we are caught up to the other working groups in terms of their recommendations, and this will really help us for this March 6-7 meeting and then the implementation that comes next. I want to just highlight once again that our intention for all of the co-chairs of the working groups and the international organization coordinators is to convene again the last week of June in Thessaloniki in Greece as part of the ISUP conference. Again, INL is happy to cover the costs of all of the co-chairs and IO coordinators to attend if necessary. The meetings will be Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday is the opening ceremony for the ISUP conference. And so we would do a special panel there on the Global Coalition, so that we would hope that you would at least make a commitment until then. But we also have initiatives of of ISUP that take place the Thursday and the Friday. So we're hoping that you would stay on and that you would be able to participate in some of the other, they have about 20 different rooms, different workshops in the different rooms that you'd find something of interest and then join some of those other initiatives as well. So those are all opportunities that you're welcome to also participate in during that week. So thank you all so much. Thank you for coming. And Simona, you have the last word.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Brian and Sarah and Brian. But also thank you so much to Yasodhara in Colombo, Sri Lanka, because we talk night and day, because when in Colombo it's night, here is day. When here is night, over there is day. So thank you to the interpreters. Yes, Yas is in Colombo.
Yeah, she's in Colombo, but she's actually moving to Australia. So she must be in
moving to
Australia right now.
Australia. But please let me to conclude with some one personal feeling, which I repeat always from a meeting to another. It has been 34 years that I have two angels on my side, which are my two sisters, my two best friends, and my two responsible for the secretary. They don't speak a lot of English, but they are really better, many better than me. Simonetta e Antonella, grazie ragazze. Let's go for lunch.